Hello and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Huth. I am joined, of course, by Nate Kosher. And if you don't recognize our names, I apologize. I'm Transaction Trevor, and that's Trade and Nate, of course. I can't forget our titles. But Nate, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I was meaning to ask you before we started. This is a non-baseball question, but the Vikings and Bears are on Monday Night Football. I live in the Twin Cities. I was going to ask you if you're a Lions fan with the Tigers, or are you a fan of a different football team?
Absolutely a Lions fan. This is so awful. I fell in love with Detroit sports back when they all were terrible. Like and I this was an adult choice, by the way. Like growing up, I was a Cardinals fan and a St. Louis Rams fan because when I was super young, I lived in the St. Louis area. But I just got exposed
And those
to
teams
Detroit
were good.
sports, and they were good at the time. Yeah, so I don't know. I went to Detroit and I got to go to games at Comerica and at Ford Field, and I just kind of fell in love with Detroit sports as a whole. Um, the Pistons even too. I mean, I was there before. I didn't go to a Pistons game pre LCA Arena, or LCA, but I don't know. I am a Lions fan, yes, but I was there through like the hard years. I was in college, like rooting for them when they lost the playoff game back then, and now they're winning, and it's fun. It's better
Yeah,
actually.
they're really good. I just realized I never asked you about NFL. I know, totally off subject, but they they'll be okay even after the loss yesterday. But
You want to talk about football? It's a sore subject. I am in playoffs for fantasy football, and I projected to win this week. Still, we'll see. I have Patrick Mahomes, and I have David Montgomery.
oh
I
no.
I had good luck with health through the whole year. Week one of the playoffs, down goes one of my
Yeah.
running backs and my quarterback. So next week
Yeah.
is going to be fun in the semifinals. We'll see what happens.
Well, Mahomes could be back, it sounds like. They don't know what's going to happen with him, but Montgomery's definitely gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was stacking him and Jameer Gibbs. So I still have Gibbs and I still have like Josh Jacobs. And like, I should be okay if I can find a decent quarterback, but that's not the point. The point
No.
is this is Coffee Talk where we talk about
Baseball.
fantasy
Yes.
baseball. And baseball is different from football. I know. So Nate, where we're going to
It
start today,
is.
we have a lot of things happening. The hot stove is running wild. I kind of want to focus on the trade more so than free. We could talk about free agent signings at a later date, but there's those trades going on. There's one big trade that I made mere hours ago at the time of recording that I think we should talk about, and of
Yeah.
course, we're going to try to get into some rookies to keep an eye out for as we head into draft season, all that stuff. But before we get into any of that, Juan Soto, 15 years and an amount of money that I'm scared to say out loud.
Yeah, it doesn't seem real. It doesn't seem
It
real.
doesn't. $765 million.
It's crazy, Trevor. Yeah. And you know what's surprising to me is I saw that the Yankees like went up to, I think it was 15 years and 750 million. They were right there. Um,
You cut out for me. The Yankees were at 160 and just lost out.
oh, sorry. Yeah. I think they offered 15 years
Okay.
and they were just about there. So to me, it seemed like maybe this whole time he had his eye on the Mets. I think that was where the talk was. A lot of people were saying that, but I mean, they were just about, neck and neck, except I don't know if it was the guaranteed money, but it doesn't sound like there's no deferments or anything. And he could make up to 800 million. Did you see that? Like with all the
Mhm.
kick-ins and everything. So just an insane amount of money, and he'll be, you know, playing for the Mets just about into his 40s or 40 years old. So,
He's 26, so he'll be 41 by the
oh,
time the contract
okay. I
is
think
over.
he's
Yeah.
25. Yeah. So 41 years old. I mean, let's say he stays as good as he is as a hitter and has that longevity. He'll be 3,000 hits, Hall of Fame, definitely MVP, all this stuff. But still, that amount of money, that amount of years is scary even when it's Juan Soto.
Absolutely, yeah, it is. It's a lot of money, and I think to the point of how he ended up on the Mets, I think Steve Cohen was not going to be beaten. I think that he came into this offseason and said, "I have unlimited money, and I have one goal in mind, and that is Juan Soto is going to be a New York Met," and I think that's what happened, honestly. Um, and he did whatever it took to make that happen, and good for him, good for Juan Soto. I mean, fantastic. We talked about how high this contract was going to be simply because he's 26 years old and one of the best hitters in baseball right now. And you can go on Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever social media you use, and you can see a bunch of comparisons about how his, stats aren't as good as some other guys who got lesser contracts than him. And it was stats maybe through, I think, the 26 year. But still, this, I don't know. It just feels different because it's Juan Soto. This was the year it happens. I mean, if he came out next year at 26 years old, he probably gets an even bigger contract. This is how it seems to work. Although this is a ridiculous amount of money. I can't deny that it is a ridiculous amount of money that he got, but he's fantastic. I mean, he has fantastic bat control. He has a fantastic eye at the plate. Defense to the side, he'll be fine defensively. He can hit the baseball like nobody's business. He is one of the elite hitters in the game, and that's what you pay for if you want to win the World Series. And Steve Cohen wants to win a World Series, and he doesn't care what it costs. I mean,
indeed, he does.
it's scary. I'm all for the contract. They gave it to him. He earned it, and they now have a legitimate bat in their lineup. I mean, who knows when he's going to decline? Who are some other players you could think of who had a great eye, great back control, patience, all that stuff? I mean, they tend to. I mean, my head goes to Joey Votto, but Joey Votto lasted a while under that contract. So you are going to have dead money, but you have dead money on any big term, any big signing, any long term signing. You're going to have some dead money. I think there's enough here where it's worth the years.
I mean, I don't know if he's as good of it. This is probably a little extreme of a comparison because I don't think he's quite as good of a hitter. But Tony Gwynn, he played till he was, I just looked it up, 41 years old, because that's who I was thinking of. At 37 years old, this is insane. He hit 372, 38, he hit 321, 39, he hit 338. He never hit below 300 except for his rookie year was 289. So I don't think Juan Soto, I'm not saying Juan Soto's quite that good of a hitter, but he has more power. Their games are different, right? But yeah, he's not someone like who's going to drop off at 30 because he's just a slugger getting by on athleticism and power. It's his natural skills. It's like I mean Barry Bonds. It's like Barry Bonds without when he got into a mega superstar and went to another level. He was that good at getting on base. I think people saying that the number thing and maybe he wasn't at where other people are at. I think they're not valuing on base percentage and how good Juan Soto is just getting on the base path, and that's what the Mets or any good team who's going to be looking for the World Series. I mean, that you can count on that.
There was a whole movie about it.
You're right. There was. But do you know what I'm saying? It's not the most exciting thing in the whole world. And people like home runs and like the big numbers, but he'll be good. I think he'll be good for a decade. I can't say he'll be good for 15 more years, but that's what you have to pay if you want to be in this realm, right?
And you're getting him before what would be considered his quote unquote prime. I mean, he's just theoretically going to get better for a few years still into this contract before he reaches his peak and declines. Theoretically,
yes.
Also, and this is probably a weird take, it's not my money, and so it doesn't bother me a whole lot what he got. I think it's cool. I get why it's fun to talk about, but I don't see why it would have any emotional effect over me other than the fact that I'm sad that I make so much less than that by just a crazy amount.
True. We shouldn't care. It's like you think of yourself. I guess if I was a Mets fan, I would think, oh no, they're tying up all this money, but Steve Cohen doesn't care. It's not going to matter.
Yep. Yeah. So Juan Soto, New York Met. Garrett
Official.
Crochet, Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, we talked about Crochet quite a bit
Mhm.
this year, and knowing that he was one of the few White Sox bright spots, we thought he probably would get traded
Mhm.
because the White Sox are basically exploding, imploding, exploding, whatever you want to say,
Tearing
blowing
it
it up,
down, burn it
starting
down,
over, tearing it down.
sell
There
the
we go.
farm, fire sale.
Thank you.
There's lots of
Um,
terms.
and so going from the White Sox to the Red Sox was interesting because it seems like the Red Sox have been connected to all of these major free agents, at least on Twitter and the chatter. Oh, the Red Sox are interested. I heard that for Soto. I heard that for Corbin Burns, and it seems like I don't know if all of those were real or not, but they needed to make some sort of move here, and they get Crochet, who's an absolute stud, young. Um, I like the move a lot. They gave up quite a bit also, but I feel the Red Sox being a premier franchise with all the other teams, all the East Coast teams, they had to do something, right?
Mhm.
I think fans probably would even want to see one more big move. They need to do something. I love it. He's awesome, and the White Sox get those young pieces back that they need.
Mhm. You're absolutely right. I'm not plugged in to Red Sox Twitter by any means, but I'm apparently plugged in enough to see several times throughout an off season a banner that's on the big green monster, big giant banner that says "We tried" or
Yeah.
"We're in on" stuff,
Yes,
something like that.
I saw
So that
similar
is
memes.
a theme that that Red Sox fans see happening with their team. Great move to get Garrett Crochet. He came out and set the world on fire as a starter last year after being a bullpen arm. Um, he was drafted in 2020, debuted in 2020 during the COVID season, so he was. I always remember him for that story. My initial gut reaction was that they didn't get enough. The
Really,
White Sox,
the White Sox, because
and
he's so
it
good.
wasn't. Yeah, he's good. I believe there's 2 years of control, and it's hard for me to believe that you're going at or you're giving up the premier starter on the trade market, and in return, you're not getting one of Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell, really just those two. I feel like you would want to get one of those two back.
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
good point.
I think if the Red Sox came at you and they were like, you can have Teal or Marcelo Mayer, I think they chose right. You take Kyle Teal, even though you have theoretically um, Cuero, who I love.
Your guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm very sad about it because I had Cuero shares that I went and paid a lot for, and now who knows where he'll play. But that's not the point. I think you're good taking Teal. You get Braden Montgomery, who has monster power, monster ceiling, but also swing and miss issues. And I feel like now the trade hinges on him becoming what you believe he's going to be. And so the White Sox, I think, have to be right about that. And
yeah,
of course, you have Chase Meadroth and Wilkerman Gonzalez in that trade too. And one of them is what I believe to be a future relief pitcher, and that's probably medium leverage relief pitcher. And one of them is a contact monster who might have a double plus hit tool, but is below average with every other tool. So it's
yeah.
just
This,
kind of interesting. Now, I say that I am actively trying to get Chase Meadroth in a league. So it's in a batting average league. I think that there is value to having him because he's gonna be a good batting average hitter. The question is, what do it depends on what you have around him, I guess. And,
hmm
Braden Montgomery and Kyle Teal and Meadroth, they have, and even Gonzalez to a degree, they have a very clear path now to getting playing time at the big league level. So their fantasy baseball stock is trending upward because all of them could be in Chicago
for
sooner
sure.
than later because Chicago doesn't have a whole lot. Um,
Yeah,
so,
I think what you're saying, a lot of it hinges on if you're saying who's winning the trade, a lot of it hinges on all of these guys hitting their potential because they didn't get one of the Red Sox premier guys, right?
Right. But it's not like they didn't get a lot. That's the thing. That's what I'm struggling with. Is I feel like it probably means it was a pretty fair trade, but also you're getting a guy who got Cy Young votes. And I get not giving good on the Red Sox, by the way. I get not giving up Roman Anthony or Christian Campbell, saying they're off limits, but it feels like they shouldn't have been one of them. I think you keep Roman Anthony, but they kept both of them. That's great, and I think that's where I'm struggling with this. Is they gave up a lot. They did, absolutely. Their last 2 years of first round picks are now in the White Sox system, on top of 2 other players who were in their top 30. I think 3 guys in their top 10. Like, that's a lot, especially considering that the Red Sox are a good development system. So I don't know. It's probably pretty fair because they gave up a lot. I just feel like you should have held out a little longer as the White Sox to try to get more, try to get a bidding war started, or maybe you find another prospect who is. I think I just wanted the best prospect to be better. I think that's what my issue is.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And so I think maybe hold out to try to get a better one. But Kyle Teal's fantastic. And now you have the guy who probably is your long-term catcher, and you can move Cuero to DH, first base, wherever, because I think obviously you put Teal back there, and he gives you a better defensive catcher than you would get from Edgar Cuero.
Yeah, I think it's interesting if you say, a bidding war or hold out longer. It does seem like couldn't they have gotten a premier prospect from a different team, up a level? But
you would think so, but maybe not. Maybe not.
I'm sure they were listening to a lot of different teams, and sooner or later they wanted to probably make the move. But I like it. I like Garrett Crochet a lot, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in Boston.
And you can. I think you could say this, Nate. Maybe you disagree, but both sides got what they needed.
Yes, I agree. But they're both in 2 very different spots, and so
yes,
it's going to work out.
I just can't wait to see what catcher they trade for with Luis Robert, but that's just me. All right. So another big name on the move, Kyle Tucker, not a guy who I had on my bingo card as getting traded this offseason, got traded to the Chicago Cubs for Isaac Paredes, Cam Smith, and Hayden Wesneski. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I actually have Paredes. I had traded for him in one of my leagues before this trade went through, simply because I was looking for, he had first and third base flexibility. He wasn't as good last year as the year prior, but I thought, oh, he's a young player. So him getting moved, I think I like that move for him personally, just because I have him. Kyle Tucker, I don't know. He puts up good numbers, but I don't know if I love Kyle Tucker. Like, at the end of the day, he for fantasy, that is, he has like the counting stats, but I guess I was just surprised that that's who the Cubs pulled the trigger on. It's interesting, but surprising, I guess. I don't know. I don't have as much to say about it. It's kind of a weird one.
I loved it for the Cubs. I'll just be honest.
You
go out. Yeah, I mean, you go out and you get a really high end player. The question is, can they extend him? I think, because you're going and getting a premium player, but also that's just for 1 year. And the Cubs, they have to believe they're in a place where they can contend. They also might be sending Cody Bellinger away. You heard at the time that they had a deal to send Bellinger to the Yankees if they got Kyle Tucker, which they now have, but also they also still have Cody Bellinger because he wasn't sent to the Yankees. I'm in a loop, but we'll see what happens with Cody Bellinger.
It sounds like it was like imminent, like Bellinger was gone, right, and that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, that's. So we'll see what happens. I think they may still be trying to move Bellinger. They got a lot of lefties now. They do, but I like the trade for Kyle Tucker's fantasy value. I like the trade for Isaac Paredes' fantasy value, since he has the Crawford boxes now. I think that's going to play really well for him and fantasy wise. I think I'm very interested to see what Houston does with Wisniewski. Nasty slider.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be a lot of fun. And obviously they have Cam Smith now too. So that takes them out of the Bregman race, which is super interesting. And you'd think that means the Tigers are going to win, but they're not going to pay $200 million. So we'll see what happens. But I don't know. It's an interesting trade all around, like you mentioned. And I think it helps almost everyone involved from a fantasy standpoint personally. But that is probably something that can be debated. There's a couple more trades we're going to talk about right now. We are going to take a quick timeout, Nate. You are listening to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Transaction Trevor Huth. I'm joined by Trading Nate Kosher. And we've been talking trades, real life trades, not fantasy trades. And there were more. We talked about two of them, but there's a couple more to discuss. And let's start, Nate, with Jeffrey Springs getting sent to the Athletics for Jacob Lopez. Or I'm sorry, he was sent with Jacob Lopez, and they got
Yes.
got Joe Boyle, Jacob Waters, and Will Simpson.
Yes.
And
so in the 2025 draft, it's interesting. So with the A's moving, we can still call them the A's, right? We just can't call them the Oakland A's. They're still the
they
A's.
prefer the Athletics, yes.
Yeah, Athletics, okay. We didn't mention it, but they signed Luis Severino, which was a surprise, kind of out of the blue.
To the biggest contract in franchise history of 3 years, $67 million.
Yes, exactly. So that was very surprising. I mean, he's probably he's a tier below these top pitchers and players we're talking about, but he's a good player. He had a nice bounce back season. So I was like, well, good for the A's, right? But then now Jeffrey Springs, also bringing him in, some injury concerns, but what I'm trying to say is for the A's with a lot up in the air, a franchise that has been battling, the city and the owner and stadium issues, all of this. These are the kind of trades that they can make and moves they can make. Like they weren't going to get Juan Soto. They weren't going to get Corbin Burns.
What?
I mean, unless they're willing to take way less money if they grew up a fan of Ricky Henderson, maybe. But what I'm trying to say is these could work out. These moves could work out for the A's. They could be sneaky if everything breaks right.
Yeah. I mean, they have some fun young guys. I don't know how I feel about Jeffrey Springs in the Sacramento AAA ballpark. That's one kind of, I don't know how I feel about that, but especially because he wasn't at like 88 to 90 last year. I think I read that somewhere.
Well,
by the end of the year when he came back from an injury.
He came back from Tommy John and then did okay, but then they shut him down because of elbow fatigue. So that's a little troublesome.
That is, but heading back the other way, I honestly don't have a whole lot of thoughts other than Joe Boyle. Look, I have seen with my own eyes what it looks like when Joe Boyle has fringe average command. I saw him on that day. That day when these guys with big stuff have it all together.
Yeah, everything.
I saw it. And this was a couple years ago when he was still with the Reds and in high A. But I saw it. So for him to get traded to the Tampa Bay Rays, I cannot explain how excited I am about that for Joe Boyle. I don't know if it's going to work. I think there's still a lot of risk attached to it, but I think this could be super exciting, and I absolutely adore what the Rays have done to try to reload their pitching. They brought in at the trade deadline a guy like Jackson Ballmeister, and they brought in Dylan Lesko, these guys who have massive stuff but have had command issues. They brought in Joe Boyle, same thing.
Yeah.
And if they could get these guys to work out, I mean, there is a lot of potential right now with their pitching. It's a big if, but the Rays are, they have a pitching lab. And the pitching lab seems to work. So if they can figure something out with Joe Boyle, I think that they have something that could be pretty special because it looks that way when I saw him have it all together that fateful summer day in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
You're right about the Rays. Obviously, very good development, very good pitching staff and system that they've had set up for a number of years now. And Boyle is the one to be excited about if they can figure him out. Um, if there's a team to do it though, one of the teams that you would say would be the Rays, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good move for him. Probably someone to keep an eye on in the deep league, especially our huge leagues that we talk about. But yeah, uh, interesting. Not as exciting as the next one we're going to talk about, which I think was the one I was most surprised by.
Which is the reason that I went out of order from our outline. All right.
It's all making sense.
It's all coming together. This last trade, the Yankees made a trade. They got Devin Williams, and they sent Caleb Durbin and nasty Nestor Cortez to Milwaukee. So you seem excited about it, so I'll let you go.
Yeah. Well, when I saw that, I was just really surprised. Like I was almost shocked. Because I'd been reading the Yankees talking about they had Weaver, penciled in. He did okay as closer. They had shown interest in a few other free agents. I didn't see them connected to Williams at all. And I've always thought Devin Williams was just an absolute stud. When he was in setup duty with the Brewers, lights out. He always seemed like he could be a great closer. When he got chance to be a closer, he was a great closer. And the Brewers they were a good team last year. I mean, they were a playoff team. They won the division. So I didn't expect that they would want to give him away. Coming back, I mean, Nestor Cortez is a quality arm. He was hurt also, but he's a good pitcher. And I just think it's a great move for the Yankees because I just always thought Devin Williams was awesome. And for the Yankees to shore up, I guess, what was kind of a question mark, it's a great move for them.
Yeah, it was a weird trade because you don't normally see. Usually, it's as we talked about because there was more trades like this in the past, but usually it's big leaguer for prospects.
Yep.
This was big leaguer for big leaguer / prospect, and I don't know. It's really interesting. So now the Brewers are looking at a rotation that has Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff, Aaron Savali, Tobias Myers, and Nestor Cortez. And I guess they're hoping Trevor Megill is their closer for the next year. At least that's what it looks like right now. Of course,
Yep.
You also have Jacob Mizorowski, who you might Josh Haderify and put him in the bullpen for a year. But unless you want him to start, I don't know. Well, they have their own plan, but I don't know. I think they did a good job filling out their rotation, and now you have Caleb Durbin, who is you see it all over Twitter, a prototypical Brewers archetype of a player. So he's probably he had a big AFL, but I don't think he's anything more than probably a bench
like
utility type.
Utility, yeah. So I'm still paying attention, Trevor. I've just pulled up our outline on my phone because I seem to have some slow internet today. But that was going to be my point. Did they sell high on Durbin because of his performance in the AFL? I think he had some crazy number. Like he had a crazy number of steals, way ahead of everyone else. So they're known names: Nestor Cortez, Caleb Durbin, and it seems like maybe they sold those guys at the right time because Cortez, he had that really good year. Then he was, I guess, medium. He's like a number 3 starter, right? I mean, he's not top of the line. He's not a number 5. So that one was the one that I was the most excited about. And typically we don't see this many trades. It was almost like the NBA, or I guess the NBA has the most trades that I can think of, probably more than football and baseball.
Yeah, it's just so in and out sometimes with the winter meetings. Sometimes they're boring, sometimes they are carnival, and this year was the carnival side.
It was. So, yeah, good for the Yankees. I agree with you. I don't know if Durbin's going to be as good as what he looked like, but he maybe like a Ty Sweeney type.
Okay.
You know what?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. Trey
Trey
Sweeney.
Sweeney.
Yeah,
Trey Sweeney.
I could. Yeah,
You know.
potentially for sure, for sure.
But
All
yeah,
right.
good for the Yankees to shore that up, and I think Williams is great.
Yeah. All right. Let's do a fantasy baseball trade. Let's get into my trade. I'll say it. I'll plead my case. I will let you tell me how dumb I am. So
Right.
I traded Tyler Glasnow. That's all. That's all I traded. I traded Tyler Glasnow, and I got Xavier Isaac. I got uh, Franklin Arias. I got Jeremiah Estrada, the reliever from the Padres,
Yes.
and then I got a pair of starters in DJ Hers and Luis Ortiz, who just got traded to the Guardians. Now, I've kind of been toying with the idea of trading Tyler Glasnow since the um, trade deadline this past season, and the reason is just health concerns. I mean, he's a fantastic pitcher that you should want to have on your roster, and he's it's hard to argue he's the most talented player in that trade, and I don't deny that. And I think that if there were any track record of longevity, that this would be a terrible trade for me. Tyler Glasnow has not pitched more than 135 innings, I believe is the mark. That's the highest of his career.
Which is
Or
crazy.
right. So I don't know. I got Franklin Arias, who I think
I'm
could take a next step in a really good development system like the Red Sox and be a really, really, really good prospect, like a high end prospect. I think he has a really good ceiling. Xavier Isaac has a ton of power, and
yeah,
he's
he's a
he's
slugger.
right, and he's a easy top 100 prospect. I think both of them are top 100 prospects. And then on top of that, I get DJ Hers, who had his bright spots last year, strikes out a lot of guys.
He did.
You get Luis Ortiz, who showed some flashes last year, got traded to the Guardians, who are known for their pitching development, known for helping pitchers get better. So, and then of course Jeremiah Estrada, who looks like he's going to eventually take over the closer spot in San Diego. Maybe not this year, but in the next year. He had a phenomenal year, high
He had a
strikeout rates. So
great stretch. So it was a
mhm.
5-to-1 trade. You're getting 5 players
Mhm.
for Glasnow.
Right, and I've had some offers for Glasnow that were not good in the past. So I wasn't. I think I had come in with a value, and I think I came pretty close to the value that I wanted when I thought if I'm trading Glasnow, this is what I'm getting. But I think getting 2 top 100 guys and then just a couple of pitchers that will fill innings and have some potential to be good. They're both still 25, 26 in a 30 team league. I like how I came out here. I do concede to the fact that if you are a Tyler Glasnow believer, then this trade looks horrible. And if you are
Yeah.
just because of the skill that Tyler Glasnow has, he's one of the best pitchers in the game when healthy. But that when healthy for me is such a big what if that I believe that I did a good job getting what I got out of him. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm not done either. Like I still have some ideas I'm floating around, but at the value that it is right now, I like how I came out.
I like it too. When you sent it to me, um, initially I was like, well, the first thing I thought was Glasnow's health. I mean, it's always right. Yes, his stuff is good, his talent is there, but he's always a question mark. Um, and I really like Luis Ortiz. I was just pulling up his line from last year. He went 7-6. This was in Pittsburgh, 3.32 ERA. He threw 135 innings. He had 107 strikeouts and a WHIP of 1.11. I think he can be good. He's a bigger guy, right-hander. Estrada's already established as I would say Estrada's an established reliever now. We saw what he could do in that stretch he had. And like you said, hers, he's on the Nationals, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think I had him in one of my leagues, and he had some nice starts too. So you're getting some guys who've already shown that they can succeed at the major league level, plus the 2 prospects. I think Isaac is going to be really good. So I approve of this trade. I could see where you could get criticism because you're trading on paper a great player, right? But the that his arm always worries me. He's not
And
a workhorse, and the health is just it kind of scares you off.
and so I'm not one that is going to trade a guy if I have injury concern for like the upcoming year. Tyler Glasnow's 31 now, I think, and has been, unfortunately for the game of baseball and for him, has had a career's worth of injuries along the way. Like he's had these health
Yeah.
problems his entire career. So if I can get 2 top 100 prospects plus in that trade, then I don't. It's just how long is Tyler Glasnow going to go? Right? Like where he's already down from peak value for sure.
Yes.
So is it worth me holding on to a guy for another couple years before his arm potentially breaks down for good because he's really good at baseball when he's healthy? Or if I see an opportunity, should I take it? And I think that's kind of where my mind was at with this trade, more so than I'm giving away who is the best player in the trade. I concede he is the best player in the trade.
He is.
That's
Yes.
not the debate I'm having. The debate in my mind, the debate is more about, is it worth having him for when he's healthy if I can flip it for guys who can help me, more. I'd say maybe not as much, but I have more access to them providing counting stats, especially in a 30-team league where rosters and playing time can just kind of dwindle.
Even if, let's say, even if the prospects in this move don't work out, you could still have 3 quality starters for your 30-team league over time, right? Two young starting pitchers, which starting pitchers are very hard to find in 30-team leagues,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm familiar with, and then Estrada, who, yeah, he could be the closer. What is the guy's name there? Suarez in San Diego. Great. He was great last year, but we'll see. He was always kind of expected after Hader, but now Estrada looks lights out. So, anyways, what I'm trying to say is I like the trade,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even if only one of those guys works out as a prospect.
Okay, good. I was having so here's the thing. The same criticisms that I had of the Garrett Crochet trade in real life, I probably have of myself in this trade.
That's what you did.
Is the prospect, the headline prospect Xavier Isaac that I got, is he top end enough?
You're right.
He
That
is
is a
a
good
top
example.
prospect. Okay, but did I get high? Could I have waited longer and got a better one? I probably could have. But I've also, had I've had a couple Glasnow offers and they weren't close to this at all. And so I don't know.
So this was an offer you received. You weren't trying to put together this package. This came to
I
you.
received something close and I swapped out one part for another part.
Okay.
One of the minor parts. I didn't want. I had offered Kochanowicz and I got Ortiz instead.
Yeah, I think it could work out. I didn't see it and think, oh, you got ripped off.
Mm-hmm. And this is a quantity over quality return, because if I really wanted to hold the Glasnow standard, I probably could have gotten a top prospect. But I mean, I still think Isaac should be considered a top prospect, right?
Yeah,
It's
I
just,
think
is he
so.
top prospect enough? Again, same criticism as the Garrett Crochet trade. I understand it and I get it, because I had those same criticisms as I was sending the trade. But I do think overall that it was a good move for me to make, or it's a move I believe in. I don't know if it's a good move for me to make. I've made a lot of moves that I thought were good that turned out terrible, but I think it's a move that I believe in at this time, and it very well could turn out to blow up in my face. And it could turn out well, but that's kind of what trading is. So
that's why we do it.
mm-hmm.
It's fun too.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't know. My wheels are constantly turning for trades in the off season. So we'll see what winds up happening. But that was my big trade. Love it or hate it, it happened. It's done now, and Tyler Glasnow is no longer on my team. So we'll have to see what happens. We are going to take a quick timeout right now. You are listening to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcherless Podcast Network. My name is Transaction Trevor Huth, and we have Trade Nate Kosher joining me. We've talked real life trades. We talked one a fantasy trade, love it or hate it. And now, one of the trades talked about earlier with the White Sox, I think, is going to come up quite a bit here. But when we are looking at redraft leagues, when you head to the draft, one of the things that can separate you, and even after the draft, if you're just looking for guys to add to a watch list or keep an eye on for down the road, it's important to know what rookies might be coming up and could help you during the course of the season. So, with that being said, do you have any rookies in mind that you think people should keep in mind?
So, well, I'm gonna start with the qualifier. So it could be people who debuted in 2024 but would still be rookies next year, right?
Sure.
That still count? As I guess I think you are just making these big rules up, Trevor, but we could probably talk about whatever we want. But that was my question. People who hadn't made their debuts versus people who had. So I like, we were talking about the Nationals, a couple of guys on the Nationals, Dylan Cruz and
draft
James
him high.
Yes.
Draft both of them high, like really high, ridiculously high. If you want them, you're gonna have to go get them.
I know those aren't crazy answers or anything, but just the pair of them together, the Nationals are going to be set for a number of years. Awesome core pieces. I think they're going to be fantasy studs. Maybe the question is, how early do you draft them and redraft? Knowing
early.
That we were just talking about dynasty, they have value. But yeah, Cruz, I would say you still looking at him early.
Wood too, absolutely. Wood is an outlier in every sense of the word.
Yeah, he's an absolute animal. So I would like to say my old friend Jordan Lawler, he's not as much of a slam dunk, and it's just a homer Diamondbacks pick. But again, this year, I mean, he's going to have a chance to break camp as a starter. And if he can stay healthy, I'm hoping that last year was just like flush it away, a weird, outlier. Speaking of, a negative outlier, and he'll be back stealing bases and hitting home runs. We hope. But I would be looking at him just because I'm a Diamondbacks fan and I like him. But those are the two guys I'm talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I like those. I'm going to pose the same team. I'll do the Nationals, but I'm going to do a different position.
Oh,
their third base battle, I think, could be really interesting. So you have Trey Lipscomb, who is not a rookie, played there last year. I think hit either right at or very close to the Mendoza line.
Has some speed.
You also have Brady House, who could take the third base job. You also have Caden Wallace, who could take the third base job. And in terms of fantasy and offensive output, Brady House is probably the guy you want to take it. Caden Wallace could be very, very interesting. I have him kind of as a sleeper almost, just because last year, I don't know. Caden Wallace, I think, could be very interesting. I'll just put it that way. He's got the defensive chops to play third. He's probably not as good a hitter as Brady House, but there's going to be an interesting battle there and several names that you can keep an eye on at least. So I think that's interesting. The White Sox are just a bowl of interesting in terms of rookies because you could have Colson Montgomery, could have Chase Meadroth, you could have Braden Montgomery at some point. Of course, there's Kyle Teal and Edgar Cuero. The list goes on and on, honestly. There are Brian Ramos is another one. Like there are options for them if they want to use them. So
yeah, that
any
A lot
rookie
to
there
look
who's
for
close.
there.
Yeah, any rookie there who's close could be someone to watch out for. I'm also kind of interested in Caden Dana from the Angels,
I know
who debuted
I've seen
last
his
year.
name.
He
Okay,
has a
he did.
chance, I think, to break the rotation in 2025. He's mid rotation guy. I think he's somebody who I'd probably be targeting in redraft leagues, depending on if somebody else jumps at him or if there's news about if he for sure makes the rotation or not.
What are your thoughts on this is another guy I was thinking about talking about, but someone we've talked about before, Jason Dominguez.
Mm.
He's already had some cups of coffee here on Coffee Talk, but I would expect next year he's going to go in with an opportunity to be a full-time player and a starter for them, and had a lot of hype. It seems like maybe it's just my perception. Are we forgetting about him a little bit among all these other top names? Is he maybe not? Is the shine coming off just a little bit with him? What do you think going into next year?
I mean, yes and no. Any prospect or young guy who gets hurt and misses a year, like they go out of the mind a little bit, right? Andrew Painter has gone out of our mind for as good as Andrew
Yeah,
Painter could be.
true.
So there's yes and no, but I think also how, some of the decisions the Yankees made didn't help. They had a chance last year to call him up to use him, and I think just was it Harrison Bader? I mean, just somebody who wasn't Jason Dominguez.
Yeah, yes,
And
yeah,
so I
that
think
did
that
happen.
scared a lot of people off, just trying to guess how the Yankees see Dominguez. He was called the Martian for a reason. He's got talent. He should have a chance to make the roster. I think he's somebody that you look out for, absolutely. But I also I don't know what to expect from him. I really don't. But
Yeah,
he
I
should
don't
get a
feel
chance at least.
he should. Yeah, I don't feel quite as strongly as him compared to the other people we're talking about at the beginning of the segment. I did see they may shift Aaron Judge to right to open up center for him.
Mhm.
But I like the two Nationals guys I talked about a
Oh
little bit
yeah,
more.
a lot more, a lot more. I am
You're with me
with you
there?
most of the
Yeah.
time, but I think that those two guys are guys you are going to have to go after if you want them in redraft. Like I think you might have to go high on those two.
What about pitchers? Well, you mentioned
I mentioned Caden
Dana,
Dana.
but I can think of probably the top person coming from your Detroit Tigers, rookie next year.
I can't think of who that would be.
Do you think?
Early and
It's
often. I would draft him
yeah,
early and often.
and of course that's Jackson Job.
Yes, that's Jackson Job. That's a hometown pick, but also you're talking about a unicorn in terms of what he can do with a baseball when he pitches it. And he should have a clear path to a rotation spot. Yeah, I'm taking him anywhere I can get him. I mean, I'm not taking him in the first round or anything, but once you see prospects kind of start coming off the board, that's when I'm like, yeah, I'm taking Job right now. I'm
And
not waiting.
he would be the top rookie pitcher I'd be looking at next year, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're thinking Bubba Chandler,
I'm not.
maybe. No,
I don't think you come close to Jackson Job in terms of hype. I mean, listen, I
no.
was
Job's at another level. I was trying to think of who else would be a worthy rookie.
so here's the
He,
thing.
he's not at that realm.
I am probably going to turn out to have been wrong, but I died on a hill last year where, regardless of who debuts first or anything, that Jackson Job was better than Paul Skeens. That's probably not true. Looking at it now, but
Yeah, right.
I still maintain that they were 1 and 2, and you could flip them, and I maintain that Jackson Job is at that level for me.
Well, then no, Bubba Chandler is
It's not at that level for me.
not part of the conversation. Yes.
Very, very good. Very
What
good.
about someone who got a couple of starts, I think, at the end of the year? Kumar Rocker.
In all the way in.
Yeah, he looked really good too. I don't think he's there's some other people ranked higher than him, but he looked like a stud, and the stuff is there. That's when it comes to pitchers. I mean, this isn't surprising, but you're looking for the young guys with the electric stuff. Might be some control issues, but we were talking about this earlier when we were texting, trying to plan out what we're going to talk about today. Pitchers who might have some nice stat lines, but no strikeouts or low strikeouts, not really that exciting. Not people I'd be targeting in drafts, unless you're getting quality starts or they have really good control. You want to go for those high strikeout, electric, high potential power guys.
Yeah, and that's absolutely. I agree with you. Like for example, the reason that I swapped out Kochanowicz in that trade for Ortiz was that Kochanowicz strikes out like maybe 2 guys per 9. I don't know the exact number, but it's not great.
It's low,
and he can be effective. That's not the question. But when you're talking about being a good real life pitcher and a good fantasy pitcher, you kind of need those strikeouts. Now, if you're in a quality starts league, like you mentioned, then you might go for Kochanowicz every now and then as a streamer. But I agree. You want a guy who has that electricity in his arm that could be really good. Like I would take a chance on Joe Boyle, even though Kochanowicz is safer.
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually had him, and he had like 5 or 6 quality starts out of his last 8 or something weird like that at the end of the season for the Angels. But still, it's just doesn't really do much for you.
Right. Also, speaking of actually just this, we completely forgot to talk about it, but speaking of people who will be rookies that can help you out in fantasy, the Orioles, right before we hopped onto this podcast.
Oh, that's right.
Signed Tomoyuki Sugano for 1 year, $13 million. He's 35 years old, but he was one of the best pitchers in his league last year. So, especially in redraft, is a rookie who would probably help you.
Good call. I forgot about that also. We were chatting about it at the beginning. So, obviously, the age is a concern, but he'll probably have a few good seasons before he's done. But he has the experience factor, right? And he's making the switch to Major League Baseball, but someone who's far along in his career. I saw he's a big ground ball inducer.
So he threw 156 2/3 innings last year with a 1.67 ERA and 111 strikeouts. He walked 16 batters the whole time.
I guess that's okay.
Yeah, I mean it's a 6.4 K per 9. He's not blowing the ball by guys at that level, but he put up good numbers, limited runs. So you might be looking at a guy who maybe doesn't get you a ton of strikeouts, but I mean, I guess you never know.
Maybe good ratios. I mean, the whip's going to be there. It sounds like.
Yeah.
And interesting with the Orioles, that's the pitcher that they've signed. I don't know if you saw last week on Pitcher List, big story about the Orioles spending. And do they or will they not spend the money? I think that's Corbin Burns. They probably still have to be in on the Corbin Burns sweepstakes, and we'll probably talk more about that perhaps on our future episode. But a low risk move, right? 1 year, 13 mil, and if he's great, maybe then you sign him to a 2-year deal. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. That remains true and will always be true. So yeah. Now, just to go away from the pitchers for a second, there were a couple other players that I wanted to mention that could be rookies and could be helpful at some point during this baseball season.
Yes.
So there are 3 guys I'm going to mention, all 3 outfielders, all on. I'm going to get in the camera. 3 outfielders.
3.
All on 40-man rosters that I think are interesting. 1, Rockies outfielder Yanquiel Fernandez. 2, Rockies outfielder Zach Veen. And 3, Athletics outfielder Denzel Clark.
Okay.
All 3 are on 40-man rosters. All 3 for very different reasons I think are interesting. Zach Veen, good speed, hopefully some power. I think the power is not as good as it was thought when he was coming out, but still, I think that could be really interesting. They added him to the 40, so I mean, why not see what you have?
Yeah,
at some point.
He's still intriguing. Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yanquiel Fernandez, huge swing and miss, but if he can figure it out, especially in cores, you're probably looking at 25 home runs pretty easy. Lots of power with him. He just needs to hit the ball more consistently. And Denzel Clark, same thing, needs to hit the ball more consistently, but he is fast and he can play some good defense. So he's got a pretty good floor to figure it out if he does get a chance with the Athletics. And especially with them playing at a AAA ballpark that's it's small. I think that he's got enough juice where he could hit some home runs and be valuable, especially this year, and prove himself for future years. But he's one of the favorite players that I've ever seen live and scouted.
And we were talking about the A's in the beginning, and we also were talking about, I think, last episode, stats that we kind of go after in drafts. And I was talking about steals. Someone like that, speed is going to translate more easily than power, or if there's questions about hitting. So there's probably fast. He's fast. There's probably opportunities there in Oakland. So I like that suggestion a lot.
Here's the thing with Clark, and I could go on forever about Clark, but I won't. I constantly think about when Christopher Morel was first called up. Everybody talked about how electric he was, how he made the game fun. He had that electricity. That's what Denzel Clark has. I watched this man in back-to-back games hit an inside the park home run. He just does things on the baseball field, and it's fun and it's exciting, and he may never hit enough to do them at the big league level, but if he does, you're talking about a guy who's Lawrence Butler type outbreak where there's just a lot of stats that can come with it and a lot of fun that can be had with it. I'm not going to lie. I didn't think this was not a comp it was. This wasn't a comp I thought he would hit, but I did at one point believe that best possible outcome, top tier outcome that almost no player ever gets to. I think Denzel Clark is in the Byron Buxton player archetype. Phenomenal defender, fast, power. Can they hit?
Yeah. But that's high praise. Buxton.
But that's like the tier he's not going to hit. I cannot stress that enough. This was like who I saw him at his best.
Yes.
Was comparable to Buxton.
Everything breaks right. Mm-hmm. Everything happens correctly.
Right.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
You're probably looking more at a low average, high steals if he can get on base, and probably some pop. I think you're looking steals over home runs. But again,
20, 25 home runs maybe?
At his best, I think it's also possible he doesn't hit enough and you get maybe 10 home runs, but you can still get
a lot of steals.
20, 25 steals out of him.
Yeah.
And again, he's probably the best defensive center fielder they have in their organization, bar none. So there's opportunity. I don't know. Those 3 guys interest me.
That's fun. Yeah.
Those, just in terms of watch them, they probably won't break camp with their team. In fact, I almost guarantee none of the 3 will. But as the season goes on, I think they're names that you watch.
Some deeper cuts.
Yeah. That's probably all you'll get from me.
No, that's
you
good.
Team up well. You can give the Dylan Cruzes and the James Woods, and I'll talk about the Denzel Clarks and the Zach Veens and the Yanquiel Fernandezes.
You can use them all if you plan your draft, right?
Exactly, Nate. Another great episode. This is episode number 32 in the books. Always a pleasure. Make sure to follow Nate on Twitter at Nathaniel Kosher. I don't know if he's figured out Blue Sky, but he's on there as well. So he
still haven't figured it out. I said I was going to by this episode.
Follow our podcast at Coffee Talk PL. YouTube is the exact same if you want to see what we look like. Don't know why you would, but I'll smile for you.
In
And
case
of
you do.
course, in case you do, and you can follow me at Huth Trevor on Twitter, and I'm Trevor Huth on Blue Sky. I always appreciate you guys listening. And of course, Coffee Talk is a part of the Pitcher List Podcast Network.